August 7th, 2017, a truck driver in South Texas calls ahead with 800 pounds of fajita meat. The kitchen he delivers it to is inside a lockup for children. The man who runs that kitchen is not in today. He has a doctor's appointment. So somebody else picks up. The driver says he's on his way with the fajitas, and the voice on the other end tells him, "We don't serve fajitas here. Not today. Not this week. Not ever." There's a pause on the line. The driver checks his paperwork, and then he says the thing that ends it. "I have been delivering them here for 9 years. By the time investigators finish counting, it will be 180,000 pounds of meat. 90 tons. $1.25 million of it bought on the county's account for a building full of children who never ate a bite. Nobody on that call knows it yet, but in 8 months, a judge is going to give the man who runs that kitchen 50 years in prison. And a year after that, a single line in a county budget book is going to quietly drop by $50,000, and nobody is ever going to write down why. Everything here comes from the appellate record, the district attorney's own public statements, and the county's adopted budget books, which we pulled and read line by line. Where the record is silent, we'll say so. On this story, the silences are the point. The man who ran the kitchen was a county employee named Gilberto Escamilla, food services administrator for the Hester Center. In plain terms, he ordered the food. He had held the job for years. He was good at it. Nobody has ever had a reason to look twice at the man who buys groceries for a juvenile jail. Now, 180,000 pounds sounds like a lot, and there is nothing unusual about an institution buying food in bulk. So let me put it in a shape you can hold. The Hester Center is small. A 2020 audit puts its design capacity at 61 beds, with an average daily population in the low 40s. So take the county's own number, and then assume the impossible. Pretend that building was full every single night for 9 years. 61 children. That is still more than 6 pounds of fajita meat per child per week. Of a food that was never on the menu. 6 pounds a week each, nobody asked. According to the court record, it started in December 2008. He would place an order on the county's account. Beef skirt by the case. And then he did the one thing that made the whole scheme work. Here is the district attorney, Luis Sáenz, describing it. Escamilla would ask the driver of the vendor company to call him when they were on their way to deliver the fajitas, so that he, himself, would take delivery. That is the trick. That is the whole thing. No forged paperwork, no shell company, no accomplice. He simply made sure he was the one standing at the loading dock. The county paid for the meat. The county never touched the meat. And he got comfortable. Investigators went through the invoices and the purchase orders and found he was delivering to his own buyers the same day he ordered. He did not need a warehouse. He did not need a freezer. He was using the county's supply chain as his supply chain, and it was working beautifully, because it was free. He sold to individuals and to restaurants, and he kept the money. In open court, he described how it began. It was selfish. It started small and grew larger and out of control. Now, you might be thinking, fine, but this is a government. There are controls. Somebody's entire job is to look at what the county buys and check that the county got it. And you would be right. There are controls. They are written down. Cameron County has a purchasing system. Vendors invoice the county. Those invoices go to the accounts payable division of the county auditor's office. And then something happens that is still written on the county's own website today. Accounts payable, in the county's words, routes the invoices to the corresponding department for approval. Now go back and read that again. The invoice for the fajitas went to the auditor. The auditor sent it back to the juvenile department to be approved. And the person in that department who ordered the fajitas, took delivery of the fajitas, and sold the fajitas, was the person who confirmed that the fajitas had arrived. He was checking his own homework for 9 years, and he gave himself full marks every time. The district attorney did not hide from this. In October 2017, he said the investigation had also uncovered that the auditor was, in his words, pretty negligent in her protocols and in checking. He called the oversight a total failure. And then he asked the question himself, what do you tell the taxpayers? Up and down the chain of authority, people were signing off on these things. They should have seen it. Even after it broke, nobody understood the size of it. When the case first landed, investigators believed they were looking at a theft of somewhere between $2,500 and $30,000. They were wrong by a factor of 40. The final figure was $1.25 million. And this is where a story like this usually goes cold, because the paper trail ends at the arrest, except Cameron County publishes its budget every year, in full, line by line. So we went and read it. Inside the general fund, there is a department numbered 5713, Juvenile Detention, and inside it, an object code, 6025, Food Human, which does tell you something about the people who write budget codes. In the budget adopted for the 2016 to 2017 financial year, that line was $170,000. The theft was discovered in August 2017, and the next budget was written immediately after. In that book, the Juvenile Department asked for the same number it always asked for, $170,000. The recommendation that went to the commissioners was also $170,000. The figure they approved was $120,000. $50,000 taken out of the food budget of a children's detention center at the very last stage of the process, in the first budget written after the Fajitas stopped arriving. And it stayed gone. The following year, that line was $120,000 again. The budget books do not say why. There is no note, no explanation. The number simply changed, and it never changed back, which leaves a question nobody in this story has ever answered. The theft averages out to about $139,000 a year, and that will not fit. You cannot take $139,000 a year out of a $170,000 food line, because the children would have been eating on $30,000 a year, and they were not. The county's own correction was 50, so either this started very small and grew very fast at the end, which is what Escamilla told the court, or the money was moving through more than one account. The public record does not say which, and in 9 years, as far as we can find, nobody ever asked. On December 6, 2017, Gilberto Escamilla was indicted on 2 counts. On April 20, 2018, he waived his right to a jury and pleaded guilty to the second, theft by a public servant. The first count was dismissed. The visiting judge, J. Manuel Banales, sentenced him to 50 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, a $10,000 fine, and restitution to Cameron County of just over $1.25 million. 50 years. Manslaughter in Texas is generally a second-degree felony, and under the penal code that carries 2 to 20 years. The man who stole the fajitas got a sentence more than twice the maximum available for recklessly killing another person. He appealed, arguing ineffective assistance of counsel and that an associate judge had no authority to accept his waiver of a jury trial. In May 2019, the 13th Court of Appeals affirmed. State records show he became eligible for parole in May 2023, with a projected release date of May 2038, when he would be in his 70s. Now here is the part of the record that is empty. We looked for what the county did next. The chief juvenile probation officer announced a review of department policy. We can find no public record of what that review concluded, or whether it changed anything. We looked for a new purchasing rule adopted by the Commissioner's Court. We can find no public record of one. We looked for anyone else. Any supervisor, any approver, any official, disciplined or demoted or investigated. We can find no public record of a single one. We looked for the money. The district attorney said at the time that he did not expect to recover it, because it had already been spent. We can find no public record that Cameron County ever got a cent back. And the restaurants and the individuals who spent 9 years buying suspiciously cheap beef from a man who worked at a children's jail. The district attorney declined to name them. Not one of them was ever charged, so this is the shape of it. One man went to prison for 50 years. And the thing that actually let it happen, the loop where the person who orders the goods is the same person who signs to say the goods arrived, was never named as the culprit by anything except a $50,000 edit to a budget line that nobody explained. Here is the part worth sitting with. That loop is not exotic. It is not a Texas problem or a Cameron County problem. Somewhere in the organization you work for, or the town you live in, there is one person who requests a thing and then confirms the thing arrived. That is a completely normal way to run a small department. It is normal right up until it isn't. And notice what finally caught him. It was not an audit. It was not a reconciliation or a spot check or an inspection or a single one of the controls that exist precisely to catch this. It was a doctor's appointment. He took 1 day off in 9 years, and a delivery driver picked up a phone. 90 tons, $1.25 million of public money, and the only thing standing between Gilberto Escamilla and a comfortable retirement was that on one Monday morning in August, he was not there to answer. And that's the racket.